This is a third generation Kia Picanto, the tiny city car that first appeared in 2017 and a bit like a celebrity has hung around in the limelight ever since, with the help of the occasional facelift of course. Now the question is, are these reliable? Should you actually buy one of them? Well, today I'm going to take you through all the common problems, show you all the issues that you tend to get with them, so you can go out into the marketplace well informed. Let's get into it. Right away, I think this little car deserves to be applauded because we are living in an era when pretty much every manufacturer has either dropped their line of tiny city cars or went all electric. You can no longer buy a Skoda Citigo, you can no longer buy a Volkswagen Up or even a Fiesta, but you can still get a rather analog, mechanical little Picanto. Now, not only can you get one of these little cars with an ordinary petrol engine, which in itself is a rarity nowadays, but thankfully Kia also did not resort to using any of the emission-inspired reliability-killing technologies that so many other manufacturers did. Things like wet timing belts, not to be found here. Instead, what you get is the choice of two little honest petrol engines. First is this, the 1 litre 3-cylinder. Now this has got about 65 or so brake horsepower, or you could get a 1.2 with 77 brake horsepower. Now if you're buying one older than the 2023 facelift point, you've got a third option available to you. It's that same 1 litre engine, but with the addition of a turbo. Now that had about 100 brake horsepower or so, thanks to that turbocharger being bolted on. But due to higher emissions, higher tax bracket, and poor sales for that engine, it was axed at that facelift point. Bit of a shame really, because it was probably the best engine that this little car ever seen. If it was me personally, I'd be trying to go for one of those older engines, dependent on budget, or the 1.2. It's just got a little bit more to it than this 1 litre. Now in terms of engine problems, thankfully, there's really not too much to say on the topic. Each of those engines that I've mentioned, they all use timing chains, so there's no change interval for an expensive timing belt in there. Even if it was a dry timing belt, you still need to get it swapped out, and certainly no wet belts, as I mentioned. That being said, however, when it comes to the timing chain, very, very occasionally, and I want to stress this is quite rare, and I've only ever seen it on high mileage examples, very occasionally you can get a bit of chain rattle on start up. So my best advice here is, if you're going to see one of these cars, especially if it does have a few miles on the clock, then ask that seller to leave the car stone cold for you arriving. In other words, don't start it up that day, let you see it on a completely cold start and listen out under the bonnet for that chain rattling. It will probably disappear in 2 or 3 seconds, so be listening out for it, and if you hear that, then that timing chain and tensioner needs swapped out, which is massively expensive. It's labour heavy, unfortunately. Massively expensive relative to the purchase price of the car is what I mean by that. Other than that, we see the occasional alternator that needs swapping out. It's not that big a deal. Parts are pretty inexpensive, and the labour for an alternator really isn't too bad. These are robust little engines, doesn't matter what one you go for. Gearboxes though, you might be interested to hear about them. Now before I get onto that information about automatic gearboxes, quick favour to ask of you, if that's alright. If you're getting value from this video and you tend to buy used cars, then consider hitting that subscribe button. I make these buyer's guides for literally every type of car, so it might be a worthwhile subscribe for you. Also, if you're enjoying the video, hit the like button, leave a comment below. That's how YouTube works. It will help recommend this video to other prospective Picanto buyers as well. So automatic gearboxes then, what do we need to know? Well, not a lot of people are aware of this, but there was actually 2 different styles of automatic fitted to these little Picantos. And dependent on the model year that you buy, that's going to determine the gearbox that you get. So up until model year 2020, the gearbox that you'll get, the automatic gearbox in the Picanto that you buy, is going to be a torque converter. Now these tend to be very smooth, very user-friendly, very reliable. Yes, it is an older technology now, but very reliable and very smooth. What we want from an automatic, isn't it? Now, if you buy one post 2020, then the gearbox that you're going to get in that car is going to be one of the newer automated manual systems. So Kia decided to switch to this, and what it is a manual gearbox, but the changes are automated by a number of different actuators and software. And to be honest with you, it wasn't the best. People have described it as you're driving along with a novice driver in a manual car. So changes take a bit of time, they can lurch you back and forth, pulling away from a standstill, it can be a bit juddery. A lot of these cars went out on Motability, and a lot of them came back on Motability because people couldn't put up with the jerkiness of the gearbox. So what I would say is, if you're thinking about buying one of these cars, especially if you've maybe experienced the torque converter version of it, make sure you go and drive the automated manual version and make sure you're happy with it before you complete that purchase. Now this next bit of advice, it might sound a little bit generic, but bear with me, okay? So on any used car, you want to be having a good look at the bodywork. Of course you do, you want to buy one in good condition. However, it's even more prudent on something like a Picanto, because a lot of new drivers have these, a lot of learner drivers have them, a lot of driving schools use them as well, so they are susceptible to the odd bump and scrape. Not that it's the end of the world if you spot that the car's had a little bit of paint or a bumper doesn't quite match the rest of the bodywork perfectly, but that kind of thing needs to be factored into the price. The other thing as well, these cars are still relatively new, so finance arrangements on them can be common. You want to check that you're not buying one with finance or a hidden history or has been written off previously and returned to the road and the seller's not disclosing that. Now, one of our channel sponsors is Vehicle Score. They provide a fantastic HPI report that will give you all that information. I'll add a link and a discount voucher for 20% in the description below. So make use of that, make sure the car that you're buying is indeed a good one. Before we get out on that test drive, one thing in particular for you to be looking at in here, and it's this, the DAB radio. Of course, have a look at the general condition of the interior, but there was a batch of these cars wherein the DAB radio wouldn't pick up the stations. There has subsequently been a fix released by Kia for this, so it just means a bit of a trip to the dealership so that they can apply that on. So if that's important to you, make sure it's picking up those radio stations. Time for a bit of a test drive, I think. Let's unleash those 65 horsepowers. From the moment you turn the key, unmistakably a little 3-cylinder petrol engine. You get that warbly noise, not necessarily a bad thing, and as I said at the beginning of the video, it's to be commended for having an engine whatsoever nowadays, because most manufacturers, they don't even make a small car like this now, and if they do, chances are it doesn't have an engine, or maybe it's got a hybrid drivetrain. If you want a petrol powered, no electricity vehicle, your options are getting very limited, and this is one of them. And on note of that engine, you might think on paper 60 odd brake horsepower is not going to be anywhere near enough, but it is, because the car's so small and lightweight. If you're just scooting round town, B roads, that kind of thing, even this little 1 litre engine, it is completely sufficient. Now if you're going to be munching motorway miles, maybe not so much, but then you wouldn't be choosing one of these cars anyway, would you? Now, although this little car's managed to stave off electrification and hybrid systems, it is becoming more apparent, isn't it? Because as I sit here, you can't help but think, in the past, you could have had 100 brake horsepower turbocharged little Picanto with that torque converter gearbox, but instead, you're not going to have that anymore, are you? You're going to have one of these naturally aspirated engines, and if you need an automatic, it's going to be that automated manual. Again, it's just these emission conditions creeping in, isn't it? One thing I will say, as I'm driving along here, this isn't going to be Picanto specific, this is new car specific. All the bongs and bings that are going off because of these various systems, you're either 1 mile an hour over the speed limit, or you aren't in the correct gear, the car bongs and bings at you an awful lot. As I say, the Picanto can't really be blamed for that. An awful lot of cars are going that way. On that note, however, one last thing to tell you about, a technical, there it goes again, it's bonging away. One technical problem to tell you about is cars from 2024, a batch of them did not have the correct code installed from the factory, so it wouldn't pick up if you were 1 mile an hour over the speed limit and make that bonging noise at you. What a shame, what a horrible, shameful, dangerous fault that is. I actually think it's a bit of a bonus. But there we have it. You now have all the tips you need to go off and find yourself your very own little Picanto, and I hope you do, because they are fantastic little cars. We need more cars like this as they continue to stave off the electrification. For those of us who want to remain with a petrol-powered mechanical car, little cars like this are like gold dust nowadays. Now, thank you so much for watching. Please do hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and I'll see you for the next video.